In case you missed it, here's a Sports Animal Rewind.
Why don't we talk to the play-by-play voice of the Memphis Grizzlies after Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. Grizzlies fall to the San Antonio Spurs. Let's bring in Eric Hasseltine, who joins us right now. Hey, Eric, Vince Ferrara, Jesse Smithey. How you doing, Eric?
I'm doing good, guys. How are you?
Good. Yeah, you're going to get to swing the clubs, I guess, this morning after yesterday. That'd be nice to swing it today,
right?
Right?
We're on hole 10 right now. It's called the Great Ball Hunt, apparently. So,
Well, Eric, I know it's never one thing, but if you could point to one aspect, one reason, the biggest reason why you thought the Grizzlies had that kind of performance against the Spurs, what would be the biggest thing you could point to?
I think they lacked discipline defensively, and they knew they needed to have more discipline defensively. They helped out too much on dribble drives and left shooters wide open. If you leave Matt Bonner, Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard that open, they're going to make them. And 14 threes for them is a franchise playoff record, but they made it look like it was a franchise playoff normal. So, the thing about this team is they're incredibly resilient, and I have no doubt that they'll be ready to go for Game 2. But, that was not a good performance, and maybe a good little wake-up call after winning 4 straight against the Thunder.
How stunned were you maybe after the first quarter? I don't know if you guys had a break and you get outscored 31-14 in the first quarter. How stunned were you that happened, given that the way the Grizzlies played in the previous series?
Well, again, I was more surprised by the lack of discipline than the score. I think anytime you get in those situations and get to where you've got a very good team that you're facing, it's you can't just relax. And the Grizzlies, after scoring the first basket, almost seemed like they thought, okay, well, here we go again. We're just going to get on a roll, and everything is going to roll downhill. So it was very, very surprising. But that's why the Spurs have been here multiple times. So you know that they'll come to play every night, and they'll be the disciplined team that they are.
Zach Randolph obviously was 1 for 8 from the field, didn't get to the free throw line. What adjustments do you think the Grizzlies coaching staff will make to get him more involved, better looks, and getting back to his game?
Well, you got to have better spacing. I didn't think the spacing was very good at all. I thought they were able to front the post, and I think that they'll spread it out more and try to get Zach involved right off the get-go. Marc Gasol had the opening drive, but then, things just kind of fell apart. And for Zach, he's a very emotional guy. He's a player that thrives off of what can happen, and I think for what he does, he needs to be involved with early touches and, a lot of touches early.
Joined by Memphis Grizzlies play-by-play voice Eric Hasseltine here on the new Sentinel Sports page after Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, Grizzlies and the Spurs. Spurs winning Game 1. Eric, is that discipline defensively you were talking about a big part of that, the pick and roll that the Spurs had so much success with?
Yeah, they run it as well as anybody. And so I think you see them set that high screen, and your defensive help side gets caught almost over-rotating. But, that's a trademark of Greg Popovich and what they do. And, it's no secret that this team has had an incredibly long run of success once Tim Duncan was here, but they were good before that. And Greg Popovich has used this system to, win a ton of games. So, I kind of laughed when people were, almost overconfident because of what the Grizzlies had done and the way they were playing, that the Grizzlies would just come in and roll over this team that's got so much experience and so much, postseason tenure. And it just doesn't happen that way in the NBA. And the Spurs certainly heard all that stuff as well, and then they were ready to send a message yesterday. But on that high pick and roll, if you get caught in no man's land, they're going to make you pay for it, and they did that yesterday very well.
How much did nerves play into yesterday's game, do you think?
Well, I think some of it had to do with that, because after the first basket, it just seemed like the Grizzlies got caught in the moment. They got the first basket, but then the Spurs came right back, hit a three, and Mike Conley just lost the basketball inexplicably. I think there was a little bit of that going on, and I don't know if as much nerves as maybe overhyped, excited. Tony Allen, who's an incredible perimeter defender, even yesterday after the game said I was awful. I was all over the place. I was, lost at all times, just kind of chasing my own shadow. So I don't know if that's nerves as much as it is just, being too much adrenaline and too much pregame hype. And, I shudder to think what could have happened if this had started on Tuesday as opposed to Sunday, because then there would have been even more buildup. But, it's one game. I think the Grizzlies understand that. I think now you've got that out of your way. They did that in Los Angeles in Game 1 in the first round and came back with a solid performance in Game 2, even though they didn't win, and, lost Game 1 in Oklahoma City. But if you lose, you'd like to at least look like you're competitive. And the Grizzlies, unfortunately, after that run where they got to within 6, were not competitive for the final, 15 minutes of that basketball game.
Before we brought you on, we had a clip from Coach Hollins. He was talking about second and third chance points by the Spurs. When you look at the box score and the rebounding totals, are pretty much the same, but did it have a different feel though?
Yeah, it did. It seemed like, when you were making a run, their second chance points came at times when you needed a stop, when you needed to hold them down, when you needed to get the ball back in your possession. And it just didn't happen. And that's okay. Again, that's one of those things that goes down that you have to go back and say we need more effort. We need to box out better. And, if you're going to win this series, you're going to have to dominate the interior. That's your advantage. The Spurs played to their advantage yesterday and knocked down 14 threes. That's their advantage. That's what they do better than what the Grizzlies do. So, you cannot allow them to match you in offensive rebounds and second chance points and then dominate that 3-point matchup. If that happens, it's not going to be a series that the Grizzlies are going to look too fondly back upon.
Eric, talk about what this Western Conference Finals achievement, getting there, what that's meant to Memphis Grizzlies fans and especially West Tennessee.
Well, I think that it's something that the fans have hung their hat on, and it's great for the fans because it's a level that you've never achieved before, and you're now on the national spotlight, and everybody's talking about you. And for Grizzlies fans that, maybe were skeptical that this team would even be here still at this point, this is solidifying what the job was started by Michael Heisley and his ownership group and now continued by Robert Perra and his group with Jason Levy. And I think it gives you a sense of accomplishment, but for the Grizzlies themselves, the players, they know that it's just another round of the playoffs where their ultimate goal is to get to the NBA Finals. The fans are certainly quite happy with what's going on right now.
Speaking of those fans, obviously I can turn on the TV and I see FedEx Forum sold out and there's people up there all the way to the rafters. But as far as that city on the whole, how much have they really gravitated towards the Grizzlies? Because you look back through the history of Memphis and, it was Memphis State, now University of Memphis, really turned that into a basketball town. Have all those fans of, say, the college team, jumped ship and latched onto the Grizzlies as well?
Well, I think there's room for both. And I've said that since I got here. There's room for both teams. And there's room for the fans to be fans of both. It's tough in these economic times to spend your entertainment dollar, in two places, but we've seen a lot of that. And I think for the fans themselves, sure, you see more fans coming out because you're winning. You see more fans coming out because you're exciting, and more fans coming out because you've got a team that's competitive every single night. But, as I always say, people that get upset at bandwagon fans, it's not something to get upset about. It's something to welcome, and if they jump off the bandwagon, that's fine too. No one owes anything to this team for being here. But if that's where they want to come to and support this organization, then we certainly welcome it. And it's a lot nicer to see 18,000 people in there than 8,000, and believe me, I've seen both.
Joined by Eric Hasseltine, the play-by-play voice of the Memphis Grizzlies after Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. Eric also hosts a show on ESPN 92.9 FM in Memphis as well. Last couple quick things with you, Eric, and we'll cut you loose. We appreciate you giving us a couple minutes while you're on the golf course. But I wanted to get your anything else that you think is important for our Grizzlies fans and for basketball fans that you might not have mentioned that you think is important moving forward in this series?
I think right now for the series, really, it's cleaning up the little things. You can't have turnovers in transition. You can't give away opportunities to score. And the other factor is playing aggressively and playing intelligently. So that's the main thing to me is if it's a situation where you're just getting beaten by good shots, that's going to happen. If it's a situation where you're giving away opportunities, that's well within your control. So I think that's the key right there. And obviously the Grizzlies have to control the paint, and they have to control the window on the glass and in the rebounding battle, or else they're going to be in for a long series.
How much of a shot do you give the Indiana Pacers against the Heat?
More than people would think. They're a good defensive team, and they certainly have the length and size on the perimeter to challenge Miami, but it's certainly a tough task, no question. We saw last year that the Pacers had a 2-1 advantage and couldn't finish it off.
Eric, you spent time in California. You're familiar with the Sacramento Kings situation. Just your thoughts on the NBA deciding not to let the Kings go to Seattle and stay in Sacramento.
I'm happy about that because I'm from Sacramento, and I'm a very thankful person to that organization for giving me the opportunity they did when I was there, and covering that team is where I got my start. So I think for Sacramento, they didn't do anything wrong. That wasn't a city that hasn't supported the team. That was a situation where the owners got in over their heads with some bad financial decisions, and to make that city pay for it would have been a mistake. I think Seattle certainly would be a great market to have a team once again, especially if they get a new arena, because the one they have now is antiquated and outdated. But, at the expense of a city that's done nothing but support that organization, I felt that would have been wrong. And what the owners and Board of Governors did, I think, was the right move. And don't want to be disrespectful to Seattle, but certainly don't want to see a team that's done nothing wrong, or a city that's done nothing wrong, lose their team.
Eric Hasseltine, the play-by-play voice of the Memphis Grizzlies, also works for ESPN 92.9 FM in Memphis. You can follow Eric on Twitter. It's Eric Hasseltine. It's Hasseltine on Twitter. Good follow there as well. Hey, Eric, thanks for the time. Enjoy the time on the course, and then we appreciate your time. We'll listen for you here the rest of the series.
I appreciate it, guys. Sorry about all the wind and noise.
No, that sound, Eric. You know that. Natural sound. Take care, Eric. That is Eric Hasseltine, play-by-play voice of the Memphis Grizzlies.